Can you mute us though?
Maybe well, just can you add me on Slack? I couldn't. When you speak, I hear you very well.
You hear as well? Mm-hmm. Perfect. Let's jotting this. Okay. Huh?
11:05.
Yeah. Okay. Or in a couple more minutes.
She said to mute everyone.
I did mute everyone. She said, what?
She said to mute the attendees.
I did that before starting.
Oh, okay. We're good.
Here. Mute participants on entry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we should get started.
We don't want to wait for people.
We said we're going to start at 11 a.m.
Okay. Sure.
So, kind of, or we can wait for one more minute, maybe. Okay, I think we can get started. So welcome everyone to this first live event of SC0x 3T 2019. We're very excited to be with all of you today. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, since you're joining from all around the world. We hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm Inma Borrella. I'm a research scientist at the MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics. And I'm part of the MicroMasters team. I've been running SC0x for 6 months now, and also the course lead for SC1x. And for this webinar, I'm here with Akash Regangar, who is the teaching assistant for this course, and also for SC1x and for SC2x.
Yep.
Welcome, Akash.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Inma. I'm Akash, as Inma said. I'm a current graduate student at MIT studying transportation engineering. And yeah, I'm the TA for SC0x, 1x, and 2x. And nice to have you all here.
A lot of work. So we have prepared a brief presentation to share with all of you today. But please remember this is a Q&A webinar. So we are here to answer all your questions about the content or about the course itself. But to break the ice, let me start with sharing with what we've prepared for all of you. So what we want to share with you today are two things. So we will divide the webinar in two parts. First, about logistics. I know many of you are new to SC0x or to the MicroMasters in supply chain management. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the contents of the course and the pace, and also about the final exam. There's some important tips about the final exam. And after that, once we cover the logistics of the course, we will talk a little bit more about the topic of this webinar, that is probability, that we cover in module 2 of SC0x. And we'll have a brief review of the key concepts of the module. We'll talk about how to develop some intuition around probability graphically, and we will briefly discuss the problem 1 in the exam prep section. So let's get started. And let me remind you that for your questions, just please use the tab at the bottom of the webinar window. You'll see a Q&A tab, an icon. So you click there, you can start posting your questions, and we will be answering them live through the Q&A tab, or here just in the video itself.
The tab is called chat. It's at the
No,
bottom.
there's a Q&A tab. Yeah. So if you see, can you go to the Zoom? Yeah, Q&A. Yes. So we will expecting your questions in the question and answer tab. All right. So let's start with the presentation. This is the course, a graphical representation of SC0x, and we made this flower-like graph for you to get a sense of how heavy each module is. Because usually people start with module 1 and say, well, this is feasible. It's just, I spent around 12 hours to cover the contents and solve the problems in this module. And then module 2 has a similar weight. And then, like, you know, maybe people just get confident and don't dedicate too many hours. The exam is approaching and they realize that module 3 and module 4 are really heavy modules. So module 3, that's statistics, and module 4 is optimization. They have a lot of content. And module 5 too, it has less content in hours, but it's also challenging because we talk about algorithms, approximations, and simulations that are usually new topics for a lot of learners. So this is just for you to, is to help you plan for the final exam. If you want to cover all the contents in the course, and you should if you want to pass this course, please realize that the weight of each module is not equal. There's differences between modules, and of course, these times, these hours we're putting here is just an estimation based on students' feedback and on our own experience. But it depends of how hard it is for you to understand some of the concepts we cover in each module. So also take that into account. And I think this is really important. I wanted to start with this slide because I want you to be aware that we only have 8 weeks left before the final exam. So please look at this graph, see all the hours that you need to put into the course to learn and to be successful at the exam, and then divide those hours between this 8 weeks that we have left until the final. The final exam. The final exam is very important in this course because it has a lot of weight. The final exam can only be taken by verified learners. So you need to be verified to take the exam. All of you should be verified because you're attending this webinar that is only for verified people. But just in case, or in case you have a friend who is taking the course too and has not verified, the verification deadline is November 20. This doesn't mean that someone can prepare for the final exam in only 3 weeks between November 20 and December 11. It's just like we want to give all of you the flexibility to just verify later in the course, but you should start preparing earlier. You should start preparing now at the very latest. Regarding the grade, the final exam accounts for 90% of the course grade. So it's most of the course grade depend on how well you perform in the final exam. The remaining 10% belongs to the module tests, these short tests that you can find at the end of each module. And if you complete all of them, that's 10% of the course grade. And just a reminder, though this is also in the instructions in the course, but it's very important. For you to pass the course, you must have a total score of 60% or above at the end of the course. So from the 100%, that is 90% exam, 10% module test, you should achieve a 60% minimum or above that. The final exam will be open during 1 week. It opens on Wednesday, December 11th at 1500 UTC and closes on Wednesday, December 18th at 1500 UTC. These dates cannot be changed. These are hardwired into the system, so please plan accordingly. We're telling you now what the dates are. It will be a timed exam. This means that once you click on Start My Exam, you'll have 4 hours to complete it. So that's it. So just, you need to save these 4 hours and be fully concentrated into the exam. Regarding the contents, the final exam will have 4 problems. These problems will cover contents from modules 1 to 5. So it's a comprehensive exam. All the course contents are included. And we usually prepare these problems for being a mix of qualitative and quantitative questions. So some about like thinking and concepts, usually in a multiple choice format, and the quantitative with numerical answers. Very important, you will have 2 attempts per question, not 15 attempts like that you have now in the module tests in the course. Only 2 attempts per questions, and you will receive no feedback. So no green or red checks, and no checking the right solution when you are taking the final exam. Do you want to add something?
Just a short point regarding the attempts per question. So most questions, so mostly all questions have 2 attempts, but unless it's a true or false or yes or no type question, it might have 1 attempt. So please double check before you submit. When you look at or solve each problem, just double check that that particular problem has 2 attempts, because if it's a true or false or yes, no type question, it might only have 1 attempt.
Great. So how to prepare for the final exam? As I said, this is the most important evaluation in the course because 90% of the final grade. So how to prepare? Take the module tests. There are 5, 1 per module, and these are very good training for the level of difficulty that you will find in the final exam. So the module tests, take all of them, and remember that the deadline is December 11. The deadline is the day the final exam starts. So you should have completed all the module tests by then. Then we also recommend you to check the exam prep section. We will be adding new content every 2 weeks. And here what we do is just solve problems from previous exams. So we share with you a problem that was part of a previous final exam in SC0x. We offer our video recitation in the platform, and then we have a Q&A live event like this one to solve any additional questions that you may have. And finally, we also encourage you to solve the practice exam. This is not available yet. We will make it available on November 20. So on November 20, all the exam prep sections and live events will be done, and we will open the practice exam that will enable you to have an experience of the time exam environment. So the practice exam is specifically tailored to be a replica of a final exam. So you will have the exact same experience, and you will have an idea of what you will be encountering later in the real exam, in the final exam. So we will offer you this opportunity between November 20 and December 11. So please just use this. Confusion between the practice exam and the final exam. If you have any questions about this, about the timing, this calendar is also shared in the course itself. In the exam prep section, you will find it. So take a look. But if you have any questions, just please let us know through the Q&A section. And finally, a note on the exam prep section. This is how the exam prep is structured. We will be covering 3 topics: probability, hypothesis testing, and optimization. It's a linear programming problem. And each section, each one of these topics will have 3 subsections. First, the problem itself for you to solve. So I really encourage you to try to solve the problem. Then if you struggled with the problem, just check the video, the step-by-step solution. It's really us walking you through every step and every thought process to solve each question of the problem. And if you didn't have any trouble to solve the problem, you don't need to watch this recitation. It's not going to add much value to this. We recorded these recitations for people who are struggling with these problems or with these contents. And finally, the 3rd subsection is the Q&A live event, and this is what we're having right now. We will have one of these for each one of the topics covered in the exam prep. Any questions?
Yeah, so there's a question about which module should the students focus on more in the final exam. I believe the final exam is fairly split across all the modules, so there isn't one specific module you should focus on. You should focus on all the modules equally in a way.
Yeah, agreed. So the final exam is comprehensive. We will be covering all the topics in the course. This representation is not related to importance, it's related to how many hours you have usually our students put into each module to cover all the contents, because some modules have more contents, but all of them are equally important. So please review all the contents for the final exam.
And there's one more question about whether there's remaining time left in the course to cover 3 modules. I believe there is. There's 8 weeks to go. So if you divide your time well among the remaining 8 weeks leading up to the final exam, I think you should be able to complete the remaining modules in this course.
Agreed. So if we don't have any more questions, do we?
No.
Okay, so just please shoot your questions. That's why we're here for, just to answer all the questions. Just so waiting for more questions. Let's start with the topic itself. We don't intend to teach you all the probability contents again. This is just an overview of what you've already seen, and maybe helping you to think about probability in a different way. So why are we teaching probability in SC0x? Well, probability is really important for so many areas, not only supply chain management. The world is an uncertain place. It's always been, now maybe more than ever. So probability is a really good tool to characterize different events that might be happening. So in supply chain management specifically, probability is useful for characterizing demand, and we will be seeing this. You will be seeing this in SC0x, Supply Chain Fundamentals, as you continue to progress through the MicroMasters. It's very useful too in inventory management. We use it a lot to create our inventory management models. And also it's used for risk management, to better manage our risk in our supply chains. And we will be seeing this application in SC0x, Supply Chain Dynamics. That's the 4th course of our MicroMasters. So really useful, as you may see, and it also applies to many other areas, supply chain management. What are the key concepts, what you've learned in SC0x Module 2? Hopefully you've already went through it. I just want to highlight what's the main key learnings that you should be taking with you to the final exam and beyond. First, the probability laws. There are 4 probability laws that we share in this course. These are very important. They are the basic of probability. It's really a very light introduction to probability. If you want to dive deeper into it, we can recommend you some more materials. But these probability laws are the fundamentals of probability. So knowing them by heart is very important. I just added one here, and it has the probability for any event to happen is between 0 and 1. So that's the first probability law. But 3 others. So I recommend you to review them very well if you don't know them already. Then it's very important, and you've learned how to characterize a distribution by taking into account 2 different types of measures, the central tendency and the spread of the distribution. For the central tendency, we saw like 3 different measures: mode, median, and the mean. The mode is the value that appears more frequently. The median is the value in the middle of the distribution that separates the lower half of the occurrences from the higher half of the occurrences. And the mean is the sum of the values multiplied by their probability. So that's the expected value, the mean. And that's pretty intuitive. When we talk about spread, well, there's many different measures too. One is range, so minimum value minus maximum value minus minimum value. The inner quartiles, that's the 75th percentile value minus the 25th percentile value. The variance, that's the expectation of the square deviation around the mean, tells us the spread of the distribution. The standard deviation, that's the square root of the variance. And we can also take into account the coefficient of variation. We will be using this a lot in SC0x, and it's widely used in supply chain management, and that's the standard deviation over the mean. So that tells us how much varies, for example, the demand around the mean, around the expected value. Then we cover 2 discrete probability distributions, and we talk about discrete, uniform, and Poisson. And we also covered continuous probability distribution, continuous uniform, the normal, and the triangle. And let me highlight that the normal distribution is widely used, and you will be finding it again and again in all of our courses and in your professional life, most likely. So this bell-shaped curve is will be like a repeating image in your throughout the course. So please, like, you need to understand it very well. All the other distributions too, but the normal distribution is key. And to better understand the normal distribution, because I totally get that if this is your first time dealing with probability, sometimes it's not so easy to grasp these concepts. So I encourage you to develop your intuition graphically. How can you do this? Through the sandboxes. In the course, there is a section that's called sandboxes that maybe you haven't had time to click on it, but it contains a series of widgets that will enable you to play with graphics to understand the concept in a way that is not through an Excel spreadsheet or calculations, mathematical calculations, but through an image. So let me show you how this looks like. Share. Okay, changing screens. Oh, that's fine. Yeah. So if you go to the sandbox section in the course, you will find different types of sandboxes for different topics in the course, but this one is about continuous distribution sandbox, and it will help you understand the normal distribution. So right now you start like this with a blank, but you can put here a mean for the distribution, let's say 100, and a standard deviation, let's say 20. If you click to recalc an auto window, you will see your nice bell-shaped normal distribution. If you move this slider here, it just, it's like you're moving your X, and this represents all the area under the curve. That's the probability, the cumulative probability. So this is really nice way of understanding how the normal distribution works. If you want, you can also like write here a value for X, let's say 70, and calculate the cumulative distribution function, that is in this case is 0.06. That's this area. You can do it the other way around. You can say, okay, if I want to cover 0.8 of the distribution or of the demand, imagine this is a representation of the demand, what should be my X? What should be my stock? You calculate and you click on show, and you'll see like here, this will be covering 80% of the demand, and this is the value, that the number of units that you need to stock. So for me, it's really useful. If you want to see, like, for example, in this case, if this is the probability of fulfilling the demand, this will be the probability of stocking out. You can just change here from left tail to right tail, and it tells you that will be around 20% probability of stocking out this area. So I really encourage you to, maybe you got it now or you didn't, but I encourage you to play with it. Just go into it and start playing, try solving some problems by using this and see how everything plays out. I think it's a very intuitive way of understanding how the normal probability distribution works. Stop sharing. Great, so now, do we have any questions so far?
We have one more question, asking again about the final exam, whether it covers any supplemental material or only the 5 modules.
Only the 5 modules, yes. So we have, the supplemental materials are out of scope for the exam. They're just there for you to learn more and expand your knowledge. Nevertheless, take into account that in the supplemental materials, you will find some extra practice problems that might be helpful for you to use for preparing for the final. And also there's this extra practice problem section. That's not supplemental materials. I really could use that to prepare for the exam. So it's it's really more materials, more problems for you to practice. Because in the modules themselves, there's not so many problems. We try to streamline the contents as much as possible. If for learners who didn't have much time, just like going through the basics and just selecting a few very key problems. But if I were you, I could really practice more and try to solve all the problems in the extra practice problems section. Would you do that too?
Yep, definitely. The key is starting early. Don't wait till the last minute because it can get overwhelming. There's a lot of course content, so start early and keep practicing from now itself for the final exam.
And finally, maybe just going through some important points in problem 1, the problem we solved in the exam prep section. Hopefully you've all solved it by now. If you haven't tried, I think that's the way of to learn, just practicing by yourself. But maybe just highlighting that in this problem we cover questions related to normal distribution, Poisson distribution, and triangle distribution. So 2 continuous distributions, normal and triangle, and 1 discrete distribution, that's Poisson. For question 1, I would encourage you to really solve it using the sandbox, because it's you can try this just for developing intuition. Then for introducing the answers and for the exam itself, I would always use Excel, because the sandbox is not guaranteed to give you an exact answer. So please use Excel for solving these problems for the exams. But for practice problems, if you want to use the sandbox to develop the intuition, I think that's totally fine. I should be helpful for you to understand what the question is about. Regarding question 2 for Poisson distribution, maybe highlighting something that where people struggle a lot. And is that when you're having a Poisson distribution and the question is, what's the probability of having any sales? In this case, the Poisson distribution is a demand distribution, represents the demand of a product. What's the probability of having sales? Take into account that that's not the probability of, having any sales. It's really the probability, the total probability, that's 1. Remember that the probability of anything to happen is between 0 and 1. So total probability is 1. Minus the probability of having zero sales. That's the way of calculating that. The probability of having sales is 1 minus the probability of not having sales at all. That's the way of approaching this kind of question. And finally, the triangle distribution is a very interesting distribution. As you all know, and Chris mentioned this very often in the courses, is the distribution we use when we have no idea about what the real distribution is. So it's a good approximation. We just take the minimum. For example, imagine this is demand again for a product. And we have never taken the data, we don't know. But we don't know what's the minimum sales we've ever had. We know what's the maximum sales we've ever had. And then we know what's usually the amount of sales we have. So if we take these 3 points of data, we can estimate a triangle distribution, which is very useful for many different applications. What I would highlight here for triangle distribution that is a little bit tricky is for questions when they're asking you if the stock is a certain number, what's the probability of fulfilling the demand or the probability of stocking out? You should be very careful of which function to use when calculating the cumulative probability, because there are 2 different ones. So if the value falls between A and C, so between the minimum and the most common value, you should be using one CDF. And if your value is between C and B, between the most common value and the maximum value, you should be using another cumulative distribution function. So please keep this in mind when solving any problem related with the triangle distribution. And this is all I had for you today. We will be happy to answer any questions you may have. If you still are struggling with some of the concepts, please use the forums. We are always checking the forums to try to give you the best learning experience, and also our amazing team of community teaching assistants that are volunteers from all around the world, also helping us with solving your questions. So use the forums for any questions you may have, and reach out to us if you need it. Yeah, that's it. No questions. Very smart people. Fantastic. So we'll leave it here. Looking forward to see you in the next live event, and good luck with preparing for the exam and covering all the contents. You still have time, but please start taking it very seriously these next 8 weeks.
All right, great. Thanks everyone for joining. If you have any more questions, you can always reach out to us on the discussion forums or by email.
Great.
Great. Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.